you go freelancer, but you don't really call it starting a business. It's just like, hey, I'm a freelancer. I'm just, those are gigs. Like I just do it. And like I do projects. You don't understand that you're actually running a business.
All right, Ran Segal, how are you doing, my friend? Welcome to the show.
Dude, Jesse, thank you for having me. It's been a while. Good to catch up.
So glad to have you here, man. So Ran, you are, you're like my spirit animal. You're my idol. You have
really,
yeah, man. Like you were actually like one of the inspirations for me, like starting my YouTube channel. Watching you zip around, like on your like electric like bike in Israel and like do freelance work and stuff. I was like, like that guy's rad. Like maybe I could do that too. But you are like YouTuber, freelancer, business owner, entrepreneur, course creator, father, like husband, like all these things, dude. Like, just if people don't know about you, I already spoiled it, but give us your 30-second Wikipedia bio.
So I've been a designer now. I think it's almost 20 years because I'm kind of old. But I've started in agencies like a lot of people. Eventually I quit, started on my own, did freelancing for a few years, full time, and have been able to build quite a successful freelance practice. And then I dabbled in started all kinds of other businesses, products, and eventually started doing YouTube and documenting my life, as you've mentioned, zipping around town, just as fun, because I was watching vlogs on YouTube, like Casey Neistat, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to show a little bit of the behind the scenes of a designer. And that ended up kind of like building an audience and then migrated into teaching by accident. And that turned out to be the business that I'm focused on today, which is Flux Academy and teaching designers. So that's how we got to where we are.
Amazing. Ron, when I think about you, of course, like I think about like your design work. I think about like a lot of stuff that you do, right? Like I've seen all that stuff, your portfolio, the work and the clients that you've worked with. But I also like what I tend to think of, because I'm so enamored by it, is like your business acumen, your goals, and the way that you have kind of pivoted. Because I've watched your career, because I'm just so excited to see everything you're doing. I've seen some of the products that you've started and pivoted away from, and how they've kind of morphed and evolved. So like Flux Academy is actually not like your first foray into teaching.
I failed in a bunch of things. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about like, starting businesses, failing, pivoting, and then finding the thing that's right. How does that work for you? How do you think about that?
First of all, I would never, I listen now to podcasts and watch YouTube channels about, other people who built businesses, and they were always, I always knew I wanted to start a business, and I had a lemonade stand when I was 5 and all kinds of like Gary V type of, I knew I was a businessman. Definitely not for me. I never thought that I want to start my own business. I had not much of an interest in that. I always wanted to go to work, to be next to people that I know and learn from other people and just have a good time and not sit at home by myself. That was my original kind of like how I grew up. But I think like a lot of people, I went there, and although I was working, in something that I loved, design, I was very frustrated, by having this 9-to-5 job, and I wanted to break away from it. So eventually ended up, going freelance to escape that. But even though, and I think it's also very common for freelancers, you go freelancer, but you don't really call it starting a business. It's just like, hey, I'm a freelancer. I'm just, those are gigs. Like I just do it. And like I do projects. You don't understand that you're actually running a business.
Right.
So I can say that, I've stumbled into it. But one thing that I can say in terms of kind of inspiration maybe is that at one of the last jobs that I did work on, the one that actually led me to quitting and going on my own, I did see it was kind of like a startup environment, and a lot of people there had side projects. So some of them had substantial revenue. And that really inspired me, because before that, I didn't think that side projects or building your own product and stuff like that can be a way to make money besides, having a job or building a company like an agency. What is like building a company for a designer? It's usually an agency. And I didn't really want to go that agency route. So that kind of inspired me to think that there are other ways that, you can do what you love, which is build stuff, design stuff, do side projects, and you can actually make money off that. So with that kind of a dream, I left my job and started to split my time between doing freelancing and doing these side projects, which the first one of them was the New School, which was also around teaching and tools for freelancers. But that failed. Quite a lot of the different things that we did there failed. And it was ironic because, all these failures were financed by not failing at freelancing. So it's
right.
So, while I really wanted these side projects to work and try to focus on them, they didn't end up working, but the freelance work. And eventually I ended up focusing on that because, I'm a father, I support my family, I needed to make money. But I kept on trying different things and also doing things like the YouTube, which wasn't intentionally or it was never meant to make any money. It was just kind of like a creative outlet. But after doing that for a while, it turned out that it has actually kind of like business viability and you can make money out of it if you have a big audience. But I think what a lot of people think, and this is kind of misleading, they think that maybe I was, did well in my freelancing because I was YouTubing or something like this, but it was completely the other way around. Like I didn't make any money from YouTube or nor got any clients, like 0 clients from YouTubing for about 3 years, and still, freelance the old school, the old way. And only after doing that out of just pure passion for a while, I actually started looking into, can that be a business on its own?
Right. It's so interesting because like the word that I hear like coming out of like the story you just told is like leverage, like leveraging one thing into another, right? Even leveraging failures and the things that you learn from those failures into pivoting and into new projects or new ways of looking at life or looking at business. It's amazing because like the leverage that you have pulled, it's very evident in what you're doing now, right? It's like this recipe. It's like this soup that I see of like, okay,
I'll tell you a story. It's like,
okay,
a lot of times I would just follow what I'm interested at the moment without understanding how this is, or have intention for that to be translated into money or a product or a service or something like this. But it ended up happening. So I'll give you the first example was, back when I was actually working in an agency, I started making short videos. That's before YouTube, before anything. I just made short videos while I traveled. So, I went on a weekend trip with my wife. I would shoot with the iPhone and then edit it and just post it to my Facebook, so to my friends to see. But then my boss saw one of these videos and he was like, oh, this video is so cool. Can you do this for the client that we're actually working with? I'm going to give you a budget. I'm going to buy. And I was like, I can actually sell this as a service. And later on,
right,
when I was freelancing, I also had this as kind of an upsell. I'll do your branding, I'll do your website. I can also put a video on the website if you pay extra. And so a lot of things, I started out just experimenting with them. And YouTube is one of them as well. That I just did them because I felt like doing them. And then it was like, oh, I can actually make money off them. I didn't start off immediately trying to think, can I do this thing to make money? But I just followed my curiosity, you might say, and
right,
that ended up well.
It's interesting. Yeah. Like leveraging one thing to another, but in there, it's like, how did the ball get rolling? It's like curiosity, interest, like passion, all of those things. I think people feel like, there's a famous book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he uses this term in that book called the plateau of latent potential. It's like people doing things for a certain amount of time and not seeing any sort of results, so they give up. And it's interesting. You said you didn't see any sort of business viability or revenue stream viability from YouTube until like after 3 years of doing YouTube. That's actually like right around the same time in number for me. And I don't know if it's because of our niche, like we're in the design space, but like I just kept making content because I wanted to. I was interested. I had no like sort of plan to start some sort of YouTube business, but around 3 years, I was like, oh, this is starting to like really be helpful for like the mortgage and like payments, and sponsorships start coming, or I had clients like reach out and go, we found you on YouTube. And I was like, this is not why I started doing this, but okay. So it just shows me that like, your passion, your interests, given enough time, like might start being, I don't know if this is a word, leverageable, right? Like,
but I don't like I have mixed feeling about the advice of like, do what you love kind of thing, because I always feel like, I love reading books at the beach, but nobody's going to pay me to do that. So, you got to do, you got to pay rent. However, anytime somebody asks me like, advice on getting started on YouTube or content or something like this, I always say, if you're not really having fun doing it, don't even try, because it takes so long before, and you never know if it's going to pay off, right? So if you're not at least having fun, you're not going to have the stamina to continue with it. It's probably even true for, starting a business and being a freelancer. If you're not really having a good time, because everything is hard sometimes, right? But the thing is, you don't really know if you like it or not before you get started. And this is where it's worth testing out the waters with, taking on freelance clients, with doing a YouTube videos, with just experiment, not necessarily quit your job tomorrow, but just try one client, just try do something on the side and see how you feel. Right.
Yeah. I've talked to other people on this show about, that similar thing, which is like in school, like there's electives, like you don't take a course before you, like in junior high or like elementary school or whatever, before you've taken like this series of electives to try everything out a little bit. And you go, oh, I really like this thing. So next year, I'm going to just take that thing for the whole year. And that's kind of like exploration, like testing the waters a little bit. And I do think, I agree with you, like aligning your passions and your gifts like together makes a lot more sense. Like I started, everybody was like 10, 12 years ago was like writing blog posts about design. I was like, that's where I'll start. I'll write blog posts. And I realized I hate to write after my very first blog post. But what do I not mind doing? Just talking to the camera, telling stories. Like, I don't mind talking. So let's make videos, right? Because that's a lot easier.
It's funny that you said it. Before I started YouTubing, I had a blog in Hebrew. So for the kind of like local design audience, that I would write once a week. And it was like a very painful thing for me, but I persisted for like 4 years. I do this on my weekend. This was actually before I had kids. So I would work up on the weekend. I would do this. I would, dread the feeling of having to do this. And then I called it like going to the gym. Like I hate doing it, but afterwards I'm happy that I did it. But the minute that I found out about talking to the camera, I was like, I'm not writing a blog again.
Ever again, right? Because it's just like, if you hate the thing that you're going, this is going to really pay off, but I hate it so much. There is the reality that some things just aren't for you. Like some people shouldn't freelance because the freedom and having to make your own schedule, like on resumes where it says like, you need to be a self-starter, you need to be like resourceful, those things. Like some people aren't good communicators or self-starters, and you need to be that to show up as a freelancer. You need to be able to make your own schedule, manage your own time well. If you can't do that, it's going to be really, really hard for you. Now you can learn those things, but at a certain point, if you just hate it every day, maybe it's not for you. And I think that's okay.
Also you have to understand that like, it's not, I think, a fantasy of like, that's the most amazing thing ever. Let's see if I can do it. I think that people have different personalities. And for some people, like freelance is not just all like pink. And like, if you're good at these things, managing your own time, you're going to be amazing and everything is going to be, there's still going to be ups and downs and, sucky days. However, the way I see it is just like, I am actually not employable. Like I have problems. Like actually, I didn't last more than a year at my job. And that is because I get bored very fast. And because I tend to think I'm smarter than my bosses and I can't stand having people tell me what to do. And so these things are the reason that I'm a freelancer, even if it's tough to manage your time and all these things. It's just, I don't have a choice. Like, because so, and I think some people you're either working well within an team environment or something like this, or you're working well within a more independent situation. One of them is better for you based on your personality and your strengths and weaknesses. And you have to figure it out by testing and experimenting, and you'll find out. But at the end of the day, you know, you need to do what makes you happy. And freelancing is not going to make everybody's happy. But if you're miserable at your job right now, maybe you should test it out, right?